Steve Johnson parked his car outside his wife Angela's office at 7 p.m., determined to end the deception they called their marriage. Unlike other husbands who might overlook warning signs, Steve paid attention to every detail. His wife, Angela, had never stayed late at work before, but for the last 2 months, that had changed. The first clue was her choice of shoes. Angela, who disliked wearing heels, had started wearing red high heels to work. She had always reserved heels for special occasions like weddings or romantic moments with Steve. In the bedroom, she paired them with white stockings, a lace bra, and a thong, things Steve found appealing. So, seeing her wear them to the office made him suspicious. When he asked her about it, Angela claimed she had an important meeting with her boss and wanted to look professional. She didn't stop to explain further, brushing him off with a quick answer. Over time, her late hours grew from 1 night a week to 3. Steve's doubts turned into certainty when Angela attended a bachelorette party at her boss, Martin Schindler's house. Angela, who disliked clubs, salons, and bars, suddenly seemed comfortable attending such events. Curious, Steve followed her and waited outside Martin's house for an hour before letting the air out of all 4 tires of her car. Angela never mentioned the incident to Steve, but later told their 17-year-old daughter, Jenny, that someone had deflated her tires. Jenny was skeptical, but Angela dismissed it, saying she was just relieved the tires hadn't been slashed. Despite Angela's claims, Steve decided to consult a lawyer and start divorce proceedings. He had loved Angela deeply during their 21 years of marriage and cherished their daughter, but her betrayal had shattered him. They had met when Angela, then a receptionist hoping to become a paralegal, helped Steve with a contract issue. After 2 years of dating, they got married and built a happy life. Steve's job as a truck driver kept him away for long hours, but they made the most of their time together. Weekend trips to places like Lake Geneva and Galena brought them much joy. However, Angela's behavior began to change. When Steve suggested a date night, Angela coldly rejected him, saying, "Fridays are for my girls. They rely on me as their designated driver." When Steve pressed her to focus on their relationship, she snapped, "If you had a real job instead of driving all day, maybe we'd have more time together." Heartbroken, Steve began following Angela. One Friday, he saw her drive to Martin's house instead of meeting friends like she had claimed. That weekend, Steve avoided her completely and decided to move forward with the divorce. He shared his suspicions with Jenny, who was shocked but reluctant to believe her father. Jenny's shock turned to betrayal when Angela served Steve with divorce papers and a restraining order. The accusations against Steve included false claims of spousal abuse and child mistreatment. Jenny, feeling guilty for unknowingly tipping off her mother, tried to apologize, but Steve was crushed. "Why did you do this to me, Jenny?" he asked. "I trusted you, and now I can't even talk to you without risking arrest." Angela relished in her victory, boasting to Martin that she had gained control over Steve's assets and reputation. Jenny, furious at her mother's actions, confronted her. The argument escalated until Jenny burned Angela's clothes in the front yard as an act of defiance. When neighbors reported the fire, the police fined Angela for violating city laws. Steve's lawyer fought to clear his name, and while the restraining order was eventually lifted, the damage had already been done. Isolated and battling depression, Steve struggled to rebuild his life. He visited the house one afternoon to find his belongings packed in garbage bags, with Angela keeping only their wedding album and family photos. Despite the emotional toll, Steve refused to give up. His relationship with Jenny remained strained, but she began to find ways to support her father. Angela's manipulation couldn't erase the bond between Steve and his daughter, and slowly, they worked toward mending their relationship. Steve's life took a devastating turn when a campaign informed his employer about the restraining order and false allegations against him. This led to his termination, as his contract included a morality clause addressing such situations. Although he could have contested it, Steve felt powerless to act at the time. Steve's whereabouts became a mystery. His only connection to family was through phone calls, and he was only seen during mandatory court appearances for his divorce. Even then, he interacted only with his lawyer and the judge. Jenny, his daughter, tried to engage with him during these moments, but Steve ignored her, walking past without saying a word. To her, he seemed like a ghost, distant and empty. Angela, meanwhile, took pleasure in Steve's downfall. She had held a grudge against him long before Martin came into the picture. Over time, her feelings grew into pure hatred due to ongoing legal battles. When the divorce was finalized, Steve managed to reclaim his share of the assets, sell the house with his lawyer's help, and keep his truck. However, false rumors about child abuse began spreading, tarnishing his reputation and making it harder for him to find work. Determined to escape the stigma, Steve moved to Chicago and found a new job as a truck driver. As he packed his things, Steve said a tearful goodbye to his parents. Jenny arrived, rushing to hug him. "Dad, I'm so sorry. None of this should have happened," she said. Steve wept but didn't return her hug. "You chose your mother without evidence, and everything fell apart. I had to protect myself. Now you see why." "Daddy, I didn't know." "I'm sorry," Jenny said, her voice shaky. "I'm leaving now. The false accusations won't go away. Once you're labeled for something like that, it sticks. One day, your mother and her lover will pay for this. Goodbye, Jennifer. I loved you more than anything." As her grandmother hugged her tightly, Jenny watched her father climb into his truck and drive away, his figure fading into the distance. Detective Jordan entered the crime scene and walked to the kitchen, where an officer handed him a note. "Damn," Jordan muttered, inspecting it. "Looks like I was right. Now I just need to figure out who did this." Turning to the technician, Jordan asked about fingerprints. "Only the victims," came the reply. The technician mentioned a neighbor heard the shot, but saw no one entering or leaving. Jordan studied the sliding door to the balcony, noting no forced entry. "The door was likely unlocked," he remarked. The technician added that anyone of average height could climb to the second floor. Jordan retrieved the victim's phone. The last call was to Angela. "I'll be shocked if this isn't Angela Johnson," he muttered to himself. After offering condolences, Jordan asked Angela why her lover seemed prone to suicide. Angela denied the possibility, insisting Steve had been punishing her. She claimed she'd been home all night with her alarm system activated, showing no entries or exits after Jason left. When asked about her height and last contact with Steve, Angela denied any recent interaction, still blaming him for the deaths. Jordan thanked her for her time, advising her to remain available for further questioning. Back at the station, the chief asked if the note matched the others. "Yes, sir," Jordan replied. The chief insisted on daily updates, acknowledging the pattern was too significant to ignore. Jordan agreed, planning to speak with Steve next. That evening, Steve and Marianne were watching Jack Ryan when the doorbell rang. Steve opened it to Detective Jordan, who asked where Steve had been at 1:30 a.m. the previous night. Steve explained he was driving back from Detroit. Arriving at 2:30 a.m., Jordan asked if he knew Jason Davis. Steve said no. Jordan revealed that Jason had been dating Angela and had apparently shot himself the previous night. Steve smirked. "No way. Looks like she's some kind of black widow." Jordan left without a word, and Steve closed the door, laughing. Marianne asked what had happened, and Steve told her another of his ex-wife's boyfriends had died. "Oh my God," Marianne whispered, covering her mouth. Steve shook his head. "Yeah, thank God I've got an alibi. Whoever's doing this better keep picking times when I'm on the road." Just then, Steve's phone rang. It was Jenny. He ignored the call. Marianne commented that Jenny missed him and couldn't understand why he wouldn't give her a chance. She admitted she had spoken to Jenny once. Steve jumped up. "What?" Marianne reassured him that she wasn't interfering, but reminded him Jenny was his daughter and deserved a chance. Steve sat back down, conflicted. Later, Steve discussed the case with his boss. "I don't have anything that ties Angela to the crime scene, Chief. No forced entry, no fingerprints, no footprints, no blood spatter issues. If not for the identical notes, I'd have ruled this a suicide too. Jordan filled in his commander about Angela's solid alibi. Her security system logs are as tight as a nuclear reactor, he said, before mentioning Schindler's ex-wife, spotted on CCTV at a club with a new partner while her kids were at school. 2 years passed. Angela shifted her dating habits, avoiding committed relationships after the tragedies with her lovers. She eventually found stability with Lance Forrest. Their relationship became public, but tragedy struck when Lance was fatally shot at home while watching a game. The weapon was found in his hand with another note. Detective Jordan received a call from Detective Stan Anson in Schaumburg. They compared unsolved cases and confirmed Angela's involvement in a similar case. However, all alibis remained solid and no new suspects emerged. Years later, Steve and Marion attended Jenny's graduation. Steve beamed with pride, wiping a tear. Marion squeezed his hand. Afterward, she encouraged him to reach out to someone he once loved. Steve declined, recalling how Jenny had sided with her mother during the divorce, which still hurt. Marianne acknowledged his pain, but Steve remained firm in his decision. 5 years later, Steve's wake took place. Angela and Jenny sat in the front row, both mourning Steve's passing from pancreatic cancer. Steve's final years had been spent quietly reconnecting with Jenny, who had rescheduled her wedding to have him walk her down the aisle. At his funeral, Marianne, still with him despite not marrying, struggled with resentment toward Angela, who had caused Steve so much pain. Jenny smiled through the wake, hearing stories about her father's life after the divorce. She found peace knowing he had reconciled with her before his death. Later, she prayed, grateful that her father had finally found peace. At the service lunch, Angela tried to reconnect with Jenny, but things quickly escalated. Angela said, "Jenny, I've found peace." Jenny froze, shocked. "You're happy now that Dad's gone? You destroyed our family, and now you're content." Jenny's fury boiled over. "I thought you might have changed, but now I hope you rot in hell." Angela tried to explain, but Jenny cut her off. "The next time I see you will be at your funeral." And with that, the mother-daughter relationship ended. 10 months later, Angela and her boyfriend Charlie dined at a steakhouse. After 8 months together, Charlie proposed and Angela accepted, relieved to move on from her past. But a week later, Charlie was found dead, a pistol at his side, and a note that read, "The price has been paid in full." Angela, after a heart-wrenching conversation with Detective Jordan, ended her life with sleeping pills, leaving behind a final confession for Jenny. When Jenny received the letter, she was stunned. "Wow, Mom, wow," she whispered, her voice trembling. She called Detective Jordan to report the confession. The letter revealed Angela's deep regret and her responsibility for the deaths of the men she had been involved with. Jenny, holding the letter, whispered, "What did you do, Mom?" As she handed the letter to Detective Jordan, he read it in silence, his expression shifting from shock to regret. "I'm so sorry for ever suspecting you," he said. Jenny, shaken, replied, "I can't believe it either. She wasn't like this before." Jordan acknowledged the confusion, but the letter made everything clear. As Jenny left the station, a weight lifted from her. For the first time in years, she felt like she could breathe again. "Thank you, Mom," she whispered to the sky before starting her car and moving on with her life.